The first thing you should know about server rooms is they don't smell like technology. They smell like cold metal, burnt dust, and regret. A sterile little reminder that everything humans build will eventually fail. Systems, marriages, loyalty. For 14 years, that room was mine. While executives upstairs argued over marketing budgets and bragged about golf handicaps, I kept this entire corporation legally compliant with Department of Defense framework. I handled restricted access logs, vulnerability audits, encrypted uplinks, and enough classified regulation to fill a small library. I'm Anna, Senior Compliance Architect, which is a glamorous way of saying I protected this company from federal prison time. And after 14 years of no breaches, no fines, and no failed audits, I assumed, stupidly, that loyalty meant security. It was a Thursday when the first warning sign appeared. Thursday is a terrible day for catastrophe. It gives you just enough week left to spiral and no weekend strength to recover. I was deep in a compliance scan when my phone buzzed. Conference room B. Bring badge. HR, not a meeting request, not a call. A 3-line execution order. My stomach tightened. Not because I was scared, but because I'd seen this pattern too many times. My father called it corporate euthanasia. Hiring a new CFO, and suddenly entire departments became cost centers instead of human beings. I walked into the room. Frosted glass, expensive chairs, air conditioning set to Arctic hostility. The new CFO, Carter Reeves, sat across from HR. Carter wore a suit that screamed new money and insecurity. His cufflinks alone probably cost more than my mortgage payment. He smiled like someone rehearsing empathy but never experiencing it. Anna, he said, leaning back, hands folded like a king passing judgment. We've reviewed operational costs, specifically your role. I didn't sit. My badge felt heavy clipped near my heart. My role? I repeated. As in, the compliance operations required by federal law? Yes, Carter said, nodding as if I'd just confirmed his brilliance. Exactly. You're extremely skilled, but also extremely expensive. Outsourcing is more cost-efficient. Outsourcing? I asked. For restricted federal-grade security operations? He didn't blink, because he didn't understand the question. We found a firm overseas, very agile, very affordable. They'll take over immediately. We'll need your badge and physical authentication token before end of day. For a moment, the room was silent except for the sound of the clock ticking behind him, loud enough to feel deliberate. I stared at him. Not angry, not shocked, just disappointed by the predictability. Carter? I said quietly. Does this outsourced team have clearance for DoD-protected infrastructure? He actually laughed. A light chuckle, like he was humoring a child. It's just data, Anna. Numbers, files. You compliance people love dramatizing it. Just data. 14 years of protecting confidential troop logistics, cyber defense testing models, and encrypted routing frameworks. And to him, it was just data. My throat burned, not with sadness, with clarity. I removed my badge slowly and placed it on the table. Then I pulled my hardware token from my pocket, a small key that controlled the root access gate to the secure network, and set it beside the badge with a soft, final click. Carter smiled, relieved. He thought he had won something. You're handling this professionally, he said. We appreciate it. I'm sure you do. There were 100 things I wanted to say. How compliance exists to prevent disasters caused by men like him. How trust, once broken, doesn't repair. It detonates. How cutting corners always costs more in the end. But instead, something colder settled inside me. I nodded once and said, "Good luck." I walked out without grabbing a thing. Not my notes, not my network maps, not the handwritten password warnings taped under my keyboard. Some lessons must be learned the hard way. Outside, sunlight hit me like an insult. I sat in my car and exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Not one tear fell. Because I wasn't heartbroken. I was free. And somewhere deep inside the building behind me, a system I built, a system designed to assume sabotage before incompetence, was ticking toward midnight. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, Carter Reeves would finally learn the difference between saving money and losing everything. The strange thing about losing a job after 14 years isn't the shock. It's the silence. Not just the absence of emails or system alerts or coworkers asking for help. It's the silence inside your body. A hollow, echoing stillness where routine used to live. That night, I sat on my couch with a glass of wine I didn't really want. My living room felt too clean, too orderly, like a hotel room pretending to be a life. My phone sat on the coffee table, screen dark. No messages. Not one person from work reached out. Not even the ones I trained, promoted, defended. Loyalty in corporate spaces evaporates the moment it's inconvenient. I turned on the TV just to have noise, but the sound washed over me without meaning. My mind kept circling the same thought. They had no idea what they'd just done. At 11:52 p.m., just as I was debating whether to go to bed early or pour another drink, my phone vibrated once, sharp and mechanical. A notification, not from a person, from the system. Critical alert, unrecognized login attempt detected. My chest tightened, not with panic, but with grim expectation. The outsourced team was trying to access the secure sector. They weren't using a federal cleared VPN. They weren't using the physical crypto token. They weren't following any of the protocols I spent years building. They were logging in like someone trying to sign into Netflix from a hotel Wi-Fi. The alert kept updating. Attempt 2. Credentials rejected. Attempt 3. Unauthorized access escalated. Attempt 4. Firewall barrier triggered. I didn't touch my phone. I didn't respond. It wasn't my responsibility anymore. But there's something every compliance engineer knows. Something CFOs like Carter never understand. Systems are alive, not in the biological sense, but in the way that anything built to protect reacts when threatened. At midnight, my phone erupted, alert after alert stacking on top of each other so fast the screen froze. Red protocol initiated. Suspicious foreign IP detected. Encryption shield activated. Access attempt flagged for federal review. I whispered the words automatically, the way someone recites a childhood prayer. Protocol red means full lockdown. No data in, no data out. My heart thudded once. Heavy but calm. At 12:07 a.m., a final notification appeared. Alert. Compliance failure trigger sent to DoD oversight server. And just like that, the system escalated past corporate jurisdiction. That wasn't a glitch. That was government involvement. I set the phone face down and leaned back against the couch cushions. For the first time since leaving the office, I allowed myself a slow, steady breath. Choices always have consequences. Carter made his. And the system responded exactly as designed. Around 1:30 a.m., curiosity pulled me up off the couch. I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at the quiet neighborhood. Porch lights glowing, cars parked neatly, the world blissfully unaware that a federal-level compliance breach was unfolding because a CFO wanted to save on payroll. Somewhere in a call center across the ocean, a group of contractors were staring at a frozen login screen, trying to convince themselves it wasn't their fault. Somewhere in his expensive condo, Carter was asleep, dreaming of praise from the board. Somewhere in a secure building in Virginia, a Department of Defense watchdog server had just flagged our company as compromised. And somewhere buried in that server room back at the office, fans were spinning harder than they ever should. Because when a system goes into red protocol, cooling drops to emergency mode, prioritizing encryption integrity over hardware comfort. If they continued forcing access attempts, the temperature would climb. At around 86 degrees Celsius, solder starts to soften. Machines don't scream, but they suffer. By 2:10 a.m., my phone lit up again. Not an alert this time. A call. Unknown number. Government prefix. I didn't answer. Not out of spite. because answering meant stepping back into a role I no longer held. Instead, I let the phone ring until voicemail took it. When it stopped, I finally allowed myself the smallest smile. Not triumphant, not malicious, just inevitable. They removed the person who knew the systems, the history, the regulations, the vulnerabilities, and they expected everything to keep running. That's not how infrastructure works. Systems don't break because of enemies. They break because the people who understand them are dismissed as replaceable. At 2:37 a.m., a text came through, short, frantic, unpunctuated. "Anna, call me right now, emergency." "Carter," I put the phone down. I finished the wine. And I waited. Morning was coming. And with it, the reckoning. By dawn, my voicemail was a graveyard of panic. 11 missed calls from Carter, 4 from an unfamiliar Washington number, 2 from the CEO, whose number I'd never seen on my phone before. Each message grew progressively more frantic. First irritated, then urgent, then frantic enough that even half awake, I could hear the desperation. The last one, time-stamped 6:42 a.m., was only 5 words. "They're here. Please call back." I didn't. Instead, I made coffee. Strong, black, the kind that wakes every nerve in your body whether you're ready or not. While it brewed, I opened my blinds. From my apartment window, the city was still waking up. Commuters dragging themselves to work, delivery trucks unloading groceries, joggers pretending mornings felt good. Meanwhile, just 2 miles away, an entire corporate headquarters was descending into chaos. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from someone I actually recognized. "Mia, HR. Anna, are you awake? There are federal agents here. The building is sealed. They're asking for you. Please respond." For a moment, I just stared at the message. This was the same woman who avoided eye contact with me yesterday while escorting me out like a security threat. Now she wanted help. I locked my phone and set it face down on the counter. Actions have consequences. At 7:18 a.m., another message appeared. This one from the unknown DC number. "This is not a request. You need to come in." Still, I didn't move. Instead, I sat at my table and drank my coffee slowly, deliberately. Because after 14 years of answering every alert, every crisis, every compliance audit at all hours, nobody owned my time anymore. At least not until I chose differently. It wasn't until 8:05 a.m. that I finally showered, dressed, and grabbed my keys. Not out of obligation, but because curiosity had finally outweighed resentment. Outside the corporate building, everything was wrong. Police barricades blocked the parking lot entrance. Black government Suburbans sat lined along the curb. Fire trucks were still on standby. Employees stood outside in clusters, shivering in the February air, whispering theories, watching everything like spectators at a disaster scene they couldn't look away from. As I walked toward the taped-off entrance, heads turned. Some stared, some whispered. Some, especially the IT staff, just looked relieved. One of the officers stepped forward, blocking my path. "Ma'am, building is restricted." I didn't bother explaining. Instead, I gave my name. The change was immediate. His posture shifted, his expression sharpened, and he clicked his radio. "She's here." Seconds later, a man in uniform stepped out from behind the glass doors. He wasn't tall, but he carried the kind of authority that filled space like gravity. Dark green uniform. Silver stars. Expression carved from stone. A U.S. Army Major General. He approached me with the calm precision of someone accustomed to chaos. "Anna?" he confirmed. "Yes." "I'm General Lawrence Whitmore. You and I need to talk. Follow me." No small talk, no courtesy, just command. Inside the building was a war zone of urgency. Cables were unplugged. Emergency lights flickered. IT staff stood pale and wordless against walls while federal cyber teams worked in silence. And then I saw them. The Outsourced team. 6 of them, sitting in the conference room I'd been fired in yesterday. They looked terrified, confused, and painfully out of their depth. General Whitmore opened the door. The room fell silent. He pointed at them, voice sharp enough to cut steel. Why? He demanded. Are unauthorized civilians touching my data? No one answered. He turned toward Carter, who stood ghost-white near the window, clutching a folder like it was a life preserver. Shut it down, Whitmore snapped. All of it, now. Carter swallowed. We're trying, sir, but we're locked out. Of course you are, the general said, because the only person authorized to shut it down is the one you fired. All eyes shifted to me. Carter's voice cracked. Anna, please, just fix it. The room held its breath. For a moment, I said nothing. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because after 14 years of being ignored, undermined, and reduced to a line item on a spreadsheet, I finally had the room's full attention. My voice was calm when I finally spoke. I'll help, I said, but not as your employee. Carter blinked. What does that mean? It means, I said, meeting his eyes, steady and unblinking, that today, I choose my value, and you don't get to discount it ever again. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was power, mine. General Whitmore didn't say anything at first. He just watched me, assessing, calculating, deciding whether I was someone worth listening to or someone making a dramatic entrance. Finally, he gave one short nod. Terms? He asked. I appreciated that. No pretense, no pretending I still worked there. Professional respect offered, not assumed. My full salary reinstated, I said, plus back pay for the termination period, a written acknowledgement clearing me of responsibility for last night's breach attempt, and a direct consulting contract with federal clearance compensation. Carter looked like he might faint. Anna, that's excessive. General Whitmore turned his head slowly toward him. Excessive, he repeated, is outsourcing classified systems to an uncertified offshore vendor because you wanted to save on payroll. Carter shut his mouth. The CEO, Sterling, stepped forward. His suit looked like it had been put on in a rush, and he had the face of a man who hadn't slept. Done, he said. All of it. Just, please, undo whatever is happening. I didn't smile. Not yet. People only learn when consequences breathe down their neck. Then get me a workstation, I said. A cybersecurity agent led me to a temporary command center set up in the cafeteria. Monitors lined the walls, each displaying warnings, digital maps, and trace logs. The room hummed with tension, the kind that makes your skin tighten. My system, my architecture, was holding. But it was angry. A specialist handed me a laptop already connected to the local secure network. Credentials? I asked. We couldn't restore your account, he said. Everything's locked behind the physical token. Of course it was. Then I need the token. Carter stepped forward with it, held between his fingers like it might explode. His voice was shaky. It was in a drawer. I didn't know what it did. I met his eyes. That's the problem. I plugged it in. Immediately, the system recognized me. A text prompt appeared. Welcome, lead authority. Override lockdown? YN, not yet. First, I said, typing rapidly, we're going to trace every attempted login, confirm no data left the perimeter tunnel, and verify encryption integrity. The next minutes were silent except for the clicking of keys and the distant murmur of agents speaking into radios. General Whitmore stood behind me like a shadow, arms crossed, posture military perfect. Finally, the confirmation logs rolled onto the screen. No data exfiltration detected. Lockdown successful. All unauthorized systems blocked. I exhaled slowly. We weren't dealing with a breach, just incompetence. Good news, I said. Nothing got out. The room reacted, not loudly but visibly. Shoulders dropped, air released. The kind of relief that comes when the worst-case scenario backs off. Whitmore nodded once. Restore systems. I typed the final command. Override accepted. Rebooting networks. returning to operational mode. Within seconds, alerts on the wall monitors shifted from red to yellow, then a clean, cool green. The crisis was over, but my part wasn't. I unplugged the token and stood. All right, I said to the leadership cluster standing nearby. Now we discuss the aftermath. Sterling cleared his throat. Anna, we appreciate... I cut him off. This wasn't an accident. This was a preventable failure caused by a financial decision made without understanding the risks. You didn't just cut payroll. You cut the only firewall between this company and federal disaster. Carter stiffened, defensive even now. I didn't expect the system to react like that. You weren't supposed to expect, I said. You were supposed to ask. Silence. Real silence. The kind that means people are finally hearing what they ignored before. General Whitmore stepped forward. Ms. Lawson, he said, his voice carrying authority and finality. The Department of Defense will be assigning a permanent liaison to this organization. And you, he pointed at Carter, will provide full cooperation while internal compliance is audited. Carter swallowed hard. Sterling nodded again, defeated. And Anna. The general continued, turning back to me. You are now the primary point of contact for all security and compliance matters, effective immediately. I finally allowed myself the smallest smile. Understood. As the room dispersed, executives scrambling, agents packing equipment, employees whispering, I stayed still for a moment, watching the monitors fade back to normal. One of the junior IT analysts, Michael, someone I'd trained years ago, approached. His voice was quiet. You're really coming back? I looked at the screens, at the people, at the building that had treated me like a line item, and then at the reality I'd just reshaped in less than an hour. Yes, I said, but not as who I was. He nodded, relieved. I walked toward the exit, feeling the weight of the moment settle into place. Not heavy, but grounding. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's simply being the one they can't replace. The building felt different when I walked back through it later that afternoon. Not louder or busier, but aware. Like the walls themselves knew something had shifted. People glanced up from desks as I passed. Some curious, some relieved, some suddenly very interested in their screens. Respect isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the absence of dismissal. My temporary badge was waiting at reception. Temporary, because the new one required federal clearance formatting. The receptionist handed it to me carefully, like it was made of glass. Welcome back, Anna, she murmured. Funny how fast tone changes when someone realizes you were the foundation, not the furniture. I took the elevator to the top floor. The doors opened to a hallway lined with thick glass and silence. My new office, Carter's old one, sat at the end overlooking the city. The nameplate had already been replaced. Anna Lawson, Lead Systems Director and Federal Liaison. A title that didn't exist yesterday. Inside, the desk was spotless. No trace of Carter except a faint cologne smell in the leather chair. I opened the blinds, letting sunlight fill the space. Not harsh, warm, honest. My laptop was already waiting, freshly imaged, access restored. Before I sat, someone knocked. Sterling, the CEO. He stepped in slowly, hands clasped, eyes tired. Do you have a minute? I nodded. He didn't sit. That told me everything. I want to be very clear, he began. We made a mistake. Not just firing you, but undervaluing what you built. I trusted numbers over people. That's a common disease in leadership, I said, not unkindly. He exhaled, shoulders dropping. General Whitmore said something this morning, he continued. He said security isn't expensive, breaches, and I finally understand what he meant. I held his gaze. It's not just security, I said quietly. It's experience, context, history. Systems don't run because they exist. They run because someone understands them. He nodded. I won't make the same mistake twice. For the first time since yesterday, I believed him. When he left, I finally sat at the desk and powered on the laptop. The system greeted me with a full-access welcome screen. All green indicators, no alerts, no chaos waiting beneath the surface. For the first time in years, the infrastructure looked calm. At 3:22 p.m., a message popped up. Internal secure chat. Carter, HR says I'll be placed on leave pending investigation. I know you don't owe me anything, but if there's anything I can say that helps, let me know. I stared at the blinking cursor. So many possible responses. Silence, sarcasm, bitterness. But none of those aligned with who I wanted to be now. So I typed. When systems fail, the first step isn't blaming people. It's understanding the flaw. Learn from this. He responded once. I will. And that was enough. Another notification appeared. This one from General Whitmore. Whitmore. Final report filed. System integrity confirmed. Good work. And Anna? Don't let them shrink your role again. I typed back. They won't. Then I closed the chat. Outside the window, traffic moved like a steady pulse. Lives continuing, oblivious to the near disaster that had unfolded. People always assume betrayal feels like fire. Anger, explosion, chaos. But the truth? Real betrayal feels like cold air. A sudden emptiness where trust used to live. And revenge, when it's done right, doesn't feel like destruction. It feels like clarity. Around 4 p.m., Mia from HR appeared in my doorway. She looked hesitant. Do you need anything? She asked. I almost said no. But then I remembered all the late nights, all the emergencies I fixed without permission to even order dinner. Yes, I said finally. A team. She blinked. A team? A real one, I clarified. Trained, cleared, valued, no outsourcing, no shortcuts. She nodded slowly. I can start drafting requisitions. And one more thing, I added. Every employee, especially technical staff, gets mandatory compliance education. No more leadership operating blind. She smiled faintly. Done. After she left, I stood and walked toward the window. Down below, employees were heading home. Coffee cups in hand, phones to their ears, unaware how close everything came to collapsing. I touched the glass lightly. 14 years. I gave everything because I believed stability was earned through loyalty. But today taught me something different. Loyalty without recognition isn't dedication. It's self-betrayal. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't fight when they underestimate you. It's step back, let the system show its teeth, and then return, not begging for space, but taking the one only you can fill. As the sun lowered behind the skyline, I turned off the lights in my new office. Tomorrow would be rebuilding. Today was closure. And walking out of that building, not as someone discarded, but as someone irreplaceable, I finally understood the message beneath everything that happened. Never let people convince you that your worth is measured by their ability to understand it. Some only learn after everything falls apart. And some, like me, learn just in time.